Cisco Certified Network Associate Day 19. Welcome back everybody, I'm Imran Rafai, your trainer for this entire series. Today we would be dealing with introduction to the Cisco router. Before we go any further, I would like to congratulate all of you viewers because my Day 1 video is almost reaching 1,000,000 views, so I think we've crossed 900,000 and very soon we will reach that coveted mark of 1,000,000 views. So thank you so very much every one of you who's contributed to those view counts. So let's take this opportunity. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click that subscribe button right below this video. Also, please do not forget to hit that like button for this video. So just hit the like button and let's see if you can get that likes up to 10,000. You never know, right? So please click on that like button before we continue any further. Right, so without wasting much time, let's get straight into today's class. Today we will look at three things. We look at the physical router, we'll look at how a router looks, we will give you a small introduction of a Cisco router and what and how and things like that, and of course we will look at the initial configuration of this device, right? So this is how a typical Cisco router looks like. So this is a Cisco 1921 router. And unlike a switch is a device which has many switch ports, like we discussed in our previous one of our previous videos. But router is a device which typically has two, right? In this case, you have 2 gigabit Ethernet, that is GE00 and GE01, right? And then of course there are USB slots. You have more slots for cards, right? And you have the aux port here, the console port here, right, the USB console port, right? And another thing is Cisco, when you see a switch on a switch to put it on, that should tell you it's a router. A Cisco switch will not have a power switch, right? Typically the front of the device looks something like this. So the back of the device is where you plug in your cables. So in this case, you would take a cable from here, from the GE 0/1, that's gigabit Ethernet 0/1 or 0/0, and you would plug into a switch, right? So this is where ports of this router is. Now in case you want more ports, you could put in modules like this. So you see these modules. So what you see here is a module that is NMEX23ES1GP, right? So it's a switching module. You can take the switching modules and you can put it in these slots. So you have these slots, you can unscrew these and you can slide these modules and these modules fit. So basically a Cisco device is that you can customize it, you can add more cards onto it. So if you look to buy a Cisco router, you would say, okay, that's not much. But then as you go on building more this Cisco infrastructure, you will see that Cisco infrastructure is very expensive. And the reason it's very expensive, it is very sophisticated and it's very reliable, right? So you could remove these slots, you could put more ports there, right? You could put more modules. This is a switching module. You could have a serial module, you can have fiber modules, right? Fiber optics modules and things like that. So Cisco devices could do a lot of things. I'm sure all of you know that Cisco did not invent the router, but router is a device that made Cisco the company that we know today, right? So Cisco was one of the first companies to mass produce the router, such that corporates and companies could buy these mass produced Cisco devices, Cisco routers. And of course, the quality with which Cisco made devices, it was absolutely fantastic, which drove the revenue for Cisco for a very long time, right? Cisco calls themselves a software company, right? Cisco says the hardware that is inside the Cisco router or a switch, anybody can, the hardware, right? You could go to China and you could get some chip fabrication companies, right? Hardware manufacturers to make a device like a Cisco router. But what makes the device stand out from the crowd is the software. It's the Cisco IOS, right? This is the operating system that Cisco really prides itself with. So Cisco IOS is what makes Cisco routers what it is. So we have learned the Cisco switch iOS, which is very similar to Cisco router iOS, right? So it's the same thing. Cisco iOS. iOS is the operating system that runs Cisco devices. It also is CEF enhanced, right? What is CEF? CEF stands for Cisco Express Forwarding, right? So a switch forwards packets very fast, almost at line speed. Why is that? That's because Cisco has a hardware chip called as the ASIC. No, we learned about ASIC, application specific integrated circuitry, right? So because of that, switch moves or forwards packets almost at line speed, right? But a router, like I said, router is a software powered device, right? It doesn't have any hardware. It's basically a software driven. So the routing decisions are made by the Cisco's iOS. So typically iOS powered, software powered, anything, right? You know how you have these massive expensive graphic cards for your games. So if you are not using a graphic card, your operating system is the one that calculates all those graphics animations and all those graphic 3D and calculations, all done by your operating system, which puts those load on your CPU, right? The CPU does those calculations and you come out. So you don't get a very good experience when you don't have a graphics card. But at the same time, when you have a graphics card with its own processor, or what you call the GPU, the graphic processing unit, GPU, and it has its own memory, the 3D rendering of your game or 3D rendering of any of your 3D application is much more better, because those calculations required for 3D rendering is done by a separate device. A hardware does that calculation, and it's much more faster and much more efficient, right? So similarly, a switch, because it does all its forwarding decisions are done by the hardware, it's much more faster than compared to a router, which does all its forwarding decision using software. But then Cisco has a hardware, semi-hardware, semi-software solution, which is called the Cisco Express Forwarding. So Cisco routers have the CEF or Cisco Express Forwarding enabled, which enhances or which improves the speed at which Cisco's routers do routing decisions, right? So that's the specialty of a Cisco router. Right, so we have done this initial configuration with a switch earlier. So we will look at similar. There are a few things that I've changed. I will tell you what I've changed. So similar initial configuration. So we could run through it at a very high speed. So let's do this. So I've opened Cisco Packet Tracer, and I'm going to take 2911 router. So this is a router. Let's take the CLI, right? And you see that the router is booting up. So let's quickly look at the boot up process, right? So it says it is running version 15.1. 15.1 is the latest version for Cisco router iOS, and which is part of the latest Cisco CCNA. Right, so it says it has total memory 512 MB, onboard is 512 MB. The platform that it's running on, Cisco 2911, which is that router. It is telling ROM on, read-only ROM on initialized, and it's telling what is the size and things like that. So you have the iOS image test, so it does the decompressing of the image like we discussed earlier. And then of course it has all the licensing agreements and things like that. After it does that, so it lists out of it also lists out the software that is running. So you have this iOS versions. iOS has different flavors. I don't know if we discussed that. If we haven't discussed that in our previous video, I will make another video exclusively for iOS versions and iOS types. I think we discussed in one of the videos. If not, anyway, don't worry, I will make another video. We will show how to identify different services that would be part of the iOS. By looking at the name of the iOS device, you can tell pretty much what features and what services that would be part of that iOS version, right? It has many versions. And from 15.1, all it's a universal version. That's why it says universal, because from 15.1 you have one iOS, and depending on the licenses that you enable on that device, you can get any feature. So you want security services, you can enable the security license. If you want voice, then you can enable voice. So it's all license based. But earlier, the 12.1 routers had operating systems which had different versions. So you had the enterprise version, you had the security version, you had the base version, you had the voice enabled versions, right? Let's say your friend has a router with the enterprise version iOS, and I have a router with the base license. There was nothing that is preventing me from taking the OS from my friend's device and putting it on my device, because Cisco did not have a licensing concept. But from 15.1, Cisco started a licensing concept that unless you have the license keys, you will not be able to enable all the services, right? Which is a very, very good thing. And we will look at licensing a little later. And when we look at licensing, we will talk a little bit more about the different versions of the Cisco iOS. For at the moment, let's ignore all that. We'll get straight into booting. So yeah, so you see that this device has this processor. You have 3 gigabit Ethernet interfaces, DRAMs 64-bit, 255 byte of NVRAM, right? 255 KB of NVRAM. It doesn't look too much, but for a device like a router which does routing decisions, I think that's pretty much. So don't compare it with your computer. It is definitely not going to be a fair comparison. Right. So a Cisco router would come and stop at this. It says configuration, continue with configuration dialog. So this is more like a dialog. So it's asking you, if you say yes here, it will run through a series of questions and you answer those, and it will configure your Cisco device. But for your CCNA, we will not be using this. So we will always say no here. You could try in your device. You could say yes, and you can try, and you will see that this it's an easier way, I would say, but then it's not the best way. You will not learn how to configure the device. So we will always say no, and we will do it the manual way, right? So we come to this user prompt, right? And then the way we did it with our switches, we say enable, right? And then we go to privilege executive mode. And from here, I type config T, right? I go into the global configuration mode. Right, let's quickly run through the commands. So I want to change the host name. I say host name R1, right? So the host name has got changed. The next is negating command, so we know what to do. So let's do this. Show IP interface brief. We see that gigabit Ethernet is in administrative down mode. So let's go there and put it on, or unshut down or no shutdown it. So at the moment when you see administrative down, it means that the command shutdown is run on that interface. So I'm going to go to that interface 0/0, right, 0/0, and say no shutdown, right? And you'll see that the gigabit Ethernet 0/0 has changed to state up. So I can go do that same command, do show IP interface brief, and I see that this command, this status has indeed gone up. Protocol will still not go up because I have not connected anything. So you just have a router, unless the router does not see some traffic in that port, it will still say in protocol down state. But the minute it starts seeing some traffic movement, it will go to protocol up, right? So that's how you do negate a command. Next, do a console port password. So console password line console 0, right? I'm in line, so you'll see that the prompt has changed from IF is interface, to line. Right here, I would say password console, just to identify that this is console. So do show run. We see that the console password has set, right? Now if I try, will it work? It will not work. Why? Because there is no word which says login, which actually is a word that enables password checking online console. So I say login, and now the password, it's a password protected. The console port is password protected. Another thing, I don't know if we discussed this earlier about password encryption. So let's assume if somebody gets access to this running configuration of this device, it's very easy for somebody to read the password. The password is very clearly mentioned here. So anybody, even when you're like looking at this running config, somebody could over your shoulder read the password, and he knows the password, and then he can log into the device anytime he wants, and he could hack into the system, right? So one way to enable password encryption is by running that command. So you can, if you go up in this, you will see that it says no service password encryption. That means this command, service password encryption, has been given a negating command, no, and that is why passwords are not getting encrypted. So let's do this. Let's go back to the global config mode, and say service password encryption. Hit enter. That's it. Service password encryption. What it does is it takes all the clear text password in your running configuration and it encrypts it. So now let's do show run, and we go to the same place. So here it says line console 0 password encryption 7, and this is the password. Now let's assume your colleague or your friend walks across, looks through your shoulder, he just sees this number. Two things. One, it's not easy for it was very easy for somebody to remember a word like console, right, and use that password, remember that password, and use it later when you're not around, compared to this, where it's not easy for somebody to just remember this with one glance, right? So that mitigates the first line of, I mean, it is your first line of defense. But let's say somehow he gets access to your running config, and we would assume, okay, now he knows this, he can just copy this, and he can, and let's try to go out, and I'm going to come back into the console port, and even if that person copies and pastes that data here, they're not going to get access, because that's not the password. It's an encrypted password. The real password is console, right? I get access. Now, is that safe? So you're thinking, okay, now that's beautiful. So even if somebody gets that string of numbers, he cannot copy and paste it here, and he will not get access to your device. Wait a minute, you are wrong. All they have to do is search for Cisco encryption 7 decoder, right? And then you get this encryption 7, and you have many websites. You can just click on that, put that string, click decrypt, and the password is here. They have decrypted that. Cisco type 7 passwords decrypted to the clear text word. They just have to copy this, go back to your device, and put that password. Very, very simple, right? So this is why putting enable password is not very, very safe. The best way is to use secret. So we go here, we will, instead of doing the enable password, we will do enable secret. So we say enable secret Cisco, right? So now when we say do show run, you will see enable secret with an encryption 5. This is the password, and at the moment this encryption 5, there is no decryption that is available online. So you're very, very, very safe, right? So that's how you do the enable password or enable secret. Next we will put a telnet password. So we go to line VTY 0 to whatever number you want. So let's say 0 to 4, right? That means we're only allowing 5 people to come. We say password telnet, right? Now if somebody is telnetting onto this device, they will use the password telnet and they will get in, right? Okay, now let's look at this side. Okay, now if you compare with our switch, in our switch it was management IP, right? We did management IP because switch is a layer 2 device, but a router is a layer 3 device. That means every port of this device has an IP address. So in a switch we went to the interface VLAN 1 or any VLAN depending on which VLAN we want the management IP. So we created virtual interfaces and we put an IP address. But in a router, we need to go to the physical interfaces, or we could go to a VLAN interface. That's perfectly fine. But for all practical purpose, we'll go into the physical interface. So we go to config terminal interface gigabit 0/0. We are in the interface. Here we put the IP address exactly like how we put in the VLAN interface. So IP address 10.1.1.1.255.255.255.0, no shut, which we already done, so there's no change. This is how you do. So we can go to do show IP interface brief, and we see that the IP address 10.1.1 has been configured to this interface. So that's how you configure the IP address. Next, we will look at the banner, right? So we have banner MOTD. We can put ampersand. We can put anything we want. We're not going to discuss much about this because we already discussed. Welcome to NetworKing router. We finish the message and we close it with an ampersand. So we have set our login banner. If you want to shut down, we just put the word shutdown in interfaces and the interface will shut down. And how do we save? We save by doing the command write, which is the old command, or do copy running to startup, right? So when you do running to startup, it says take everything that's on the running configuration, which is nothing but this show running configuration, right, which is show run. So it's just showing you all the running configuration that we've done. So we have put this enable secret password, we have enabled from no service password encryption, we have done service password encryption, right? We have gone into the gigabit ethernet 0/0. We put an IP address. This we have also done no shut. That's why this port does not have shutdown command like in these ports. We have also enabled console password, right? We put a password. We have enabled login on console. We have gone to line VTY 0 to 4. Again, we have put a password, and because service password encryption is on, passwords are encrypted with 7, right? And again, login is done here. So all this done we have done, and this is in the running configuration. So we can do show startup configuration. This is the startup configuration. It says startup configuration is not present in this device because it's a brand new device. There's no startup. So when we do this copy run or running config to startup config, what it does, it asks you this. So you say yes, you confirm saying the destination is startup. That means you're taking everything from running to putting to startup, and say enter building. Now when you say show startup, this is the startup, which is exactly the running config, right? So now if I shut down the device and start it again, it will take the configuration from your startup configuration and boot the switch, right? So verification commands, like we said, show IP interface brief. This is one of the best show commands. We get a snapshot of everything. We can also look show IP, show interface, right? And we can click on enter, and it will show all the interfaces that's in this device. So it will show you interface 0/0, 0/1, and it will look at all the interfaces, data on that interface, right? And then there's VLAN 1 interface that's there. So it'll tell you what. So this is best to look. So if you want to look at one particular interface, you can say show interfaces G 0/0, right? And it will tell you all the statistics on this interface G 0/0. So it'll tell you line protocol down, whatever that you want, it's all shown here. So there are a few show configurations, and it can give you a lot of information, right? The most important thing, like I said, of this device, of a router, is the routing table. So show IP route, and this is the routing table. So at the moment there's no routing because we are not connected to any device. We have not done any routing, and this is what we will be looking from the next video onwards, where we would be creating different protocols. We'll be using protocols, or we would do static routes to fill up these tables, to make this table. So we will look how routing table fills up these table as and when you connect new devices by enabling certain routing protocols or by using static routing. So that's something we will be looking, and we will start looking it. And just this command is going to be your most favorite command, because in a routing world, show IP route is everything. You start your troubleshooting from there, right? So that's all I wanted to discuss in today's class. So like I said, thank you so much, and thank you so much for loving what we're doing. We are doing this for free. We're doing this in our free time. A lot of people some of them are already abusing me for taking such a long time for making these videos, but you need to understand I'm doing this in my free time. I'm not charging for this. I'm not, of course you're free to send me money. You are free to send me money, but I'm not asking for any money. I'm not charging you anything. And like I said, there are so many video channels, video websites are asking my videos, so they want to put it there and charge and make me some revenue. Obviously they get some revenue share, but I don't want to go into that, because I have promised to keep this video free, and I will keep it free. But unfortunately, a lot of people are taking it for granted, and they're thinking I'm jobless. Unfortunately, I'm not a jobless man. I run a company. I have a lot of people working with me, a lot of responsibilities, and getting time out of that itself is a big task. And I am doing that because I know the quality of content that's available on the internet for Cisco CCNA is terrible, right? So I have promised you to keep this free, to keep it at a very high standard, and that's something I will keep it until the end of this series. Of course, the next video series, I don't know, maybe I will do a different model, but this series I promise to keep it free forever, right? So the only thing I ask of you is to share these videos as much as possible, right? Please like the videos, please subscribe to us. The more you like, the more you subscribe, the more YouTube starts promoting our videos. And of course, the more it starts promoting, the more the channel grows. It becomes better for us because we can start running ads on it, and we will make sure that we will keep this free for you, right? You viewers, it's free, but we will start running ads and things like that, which we can do with your support. So please share these videos and watch it. Make sure that you watch these videos only on YouTube, because if you watch it on any other medium, or if you download, of course we don't give you permission for that, because we want the counts, the view counts to go up. That's why we're keeping it free. So please make sure that you watch it on YouTube. If you see these videos on any other channel on YouTube or any other place other than official networking mediums, please report it to us so that we can claim those videos on copyright infringements, right? Thank you so much once again. Like our videos, share us, subscribe to our channel, like our Facebook channel. Please also review our or give us some reviews on Facebook, on our Facebook page. It will really motivate all of us who are doing this in our free time. Thank you so much once again, and hope to see you all very soon in the next video. Bye bye.